Today I'm going to continue our series on Song of Solomon. Last week it got a little warm in here, and I understand that because Song of Solomon, it changes kind of the way you see the Bible. When God decided to put Song of Solomon in the Bible, he did it for a purpose, because God honors passionate marital intimacy. And I want you to know that, and I want you to know that God is not shy about that. He's not ashamed about that. He made it, and he said it was good. And we got to have that same understanding. And today we're going to continue that series. If you want to follow along in today's notes and you have not received them, just raise your hand, and at this time the ushers will be able to give you one of the notes to follow along today. The first 2 weeks of the Song of Solomon series, we talked about pursuing others. We talked about pursuing our spouses and rekindling the romance last week. Rekindling the romance between you and your spouse. And I believe Solomon wrote Song of Solomon to show us that we need to pursue our spouses and pursue the relationships in our life. We can't just assume that they happen. See, a lot of people think a wedding is the marriage. They get to the wedding and it's like, okay, everything's going to be good from this point on. You all know that have been married that it takes work after that point. You start to get used to all these things, and you take things for granted, and before long, you've got to make some decisions in your life. And we're going to talk about that today. See, after all, the most important decision you'll make in life is whom you will serve. Whether it's going to be Jesus or yourself. Most important decision you make in life. And in fact, on March 12th, we are having a water baptism service here. If you've never publicly been water baptized and you would like to be water baptized just to show everyone, and it's symbolic of your old life to new life. If you are interested in being water baptized, on March 12th, we're going to have a water baptism service here and a baby dedication and some other stuff, so it's going to be kind of a fun day. If you're interested, please see me or call the church office, and we can give you the information for that. But the second most important decision in your life is who you're going to marry. Second most important decision in your life is who you're going to marry. Last week, we took a look at Hebrews 13:4. It says, "Marriage should be honored by all, and the marriage bed kept pure. For God will judge the adulterer and all the sexual immoral." We looked at that verse, and we looked at what marriage and honoring marriage looks like. And we're going to continue that today in Song of Solomon. See, Scripture says that marriage should be honored by all, but is it today? Is marriage honored by all today? Today, traditional marriage is on a steep decline. In fact, more people would rather cohabitate with each other than to pledge themselves to each other. And to make matters worse, same-sex marriages are on an all-time high. The majority of our culture is rejecting traditional marriage. How did we get to that point? How did we get to that point that marriage is no longer important, that weddings are no longer important? The only time they're important is if they're with the same sex. And that's sad. We've made our culture that we don't care about weddings and we don't care about marriage. And I don't want us to ever to get to that point, because these thoughts and practices go against everything God has designed. Even in the book of Song of Solomon. If you have your Bibles, turn to Song of Solomon. Even in the book of Song of Solomon, there's the order of progression to everything. First of all, there's the engagement. Verse 1 through chapter 3, verse 5 is the engagement time. They're talking about how much they love each other. And then from 3:6 to 5:1, they actually talk about the wedding day. And then from 5:2 to 8:14, they talk about life and marriage. Each one of these three were tremendous opportunities to catch this were tremendous opportunities to celebrate. The engagement, the wedding, and the marriage are three areas that are tremendous opportunities to celebrate. Do you remember the joy of engagement? How many of you remember asking the father of the bride for his daughter? How many of you guys remember popping the question? Ladies, do you remember seeing him drop to one knee and go, oh no, he's not? Ladies, do you remember staring at the ring with everything you do? The blissful wedding preparations? Blissful? Finding the right dress, months of prep for the special moment, looking at venues, trying food, counseling. You were so in love and it was a joyous time. Do you remember the engagement time? Do you remember your wedding day? The joy of seeing your spouse walk down the aisle. I know everyone stands up and stares at the bride. I always stare at the groom. I always look right at the groom's face to see what he's doing. Thanking family and friends for coming. Do you remember the pain of smiling all day? Like for the next 2 days, you're just like, ooh. Because you just smile so much. The honeymoon, the memories. Your marriage is something to celebrate also. This week, March 3rd, marks 44 years for Dale and Ann Slater. Where are they? Right over here? Right over there. 44 years, am I correct? 44 years. That's awesome. That's awesome. Marriages are something to celebrate also. Our society is robbing everyone from the joys of celebrating the engagement, the wedding, the marriage. See, God's design for you is to meet someone, for you to court them, to marry them, and live happily ever after. But when you don't honor marriage, you don't get to celebrate like God intended. Now, we celebrate, okay, when we get married. I grew up in a traditional family. I mean, I'm Americanized as Americanized can be. Okay, so we have the wedding and the reception right after. That's kind of what I grew up with, and it was kind of in the church, and it was no big deal. I married an ethnic family. It's a big deal for the party. Okay? For me, it was just, okay, get married, reception done. No. We had to make our wedding day be on the day we could get the hall. The church didn't matter, the hall. It was about the party. And then when you had the party, it was like a party from like 6 o'clock until like 11 o'clock at night. Dancing and craziness and whatever. And if, I have an Italian family, we were trying to get a family photo, and all of a sudden they put an Italian song, That's Amore, on, and it was just chaos at that point. It was a party. Do you know in Jewish culture, a wedding lasted 7 days? It was a party. It was all out. A great, huge thing to celebrate. I'm kind of sad we don't celebrate it as much anymore. God designed the engagement, the wedding, and the marriage to be so much fun. And I want you to understand that today. I want you to understand that's God's intention. That's what we see in Song of Solomon. And I'm saying today that I want to warn us as a culture that we don't lose this. That we don't celebrate when a young couple gets married. We don't celebrate with them. We celebrate big with them. And we give them the best advice we can, and we follow up, and we mentor them, and we work through these things, because there's warnings in Song of Solomon that what happens if we allow society to dictate our lives. See, our society has made a mockery of traditional wedding and marriage. I mean, so much of our society has grown up in divorce that they think that the lie that cohabitation is the better way to go is the way to avoid divorce. If you look at the stats, cohabitation leads to more divorce than marriage does. And we're going to talk about that. See, basically, cohabitation, if you don't know what that means, it's living together in a sexual relationship without marriage. And against popular opinion, there are downfalls to this. Number one, cohabitation doesn't honor marriage. Remember, Hebrews 13:4 says marriage should be honored by all and the marriage bed kept pure. See, your wedding day is not just someday. Your wedding day is your one day to celebrate. It's when you spend the most amount of money, ungodly amounts of money. I have a daughter. Ungodly amounts of money on one day. But it's a good thing. It's a good celebration. And your wedding night is supposed to be something amazing where you save yourself for your spouse. Yet today, people would rather have sex and they would rather see if they're compatible before having a wedding. But that's not honoring marriage. And sadly, I will say, according to Hebrews chapter 13:4, that God will judge people who do that. See, they miss out on the many blessings that God bestows on those who honor marriage. I'm a firm believer. In youth, I've told you this a million times. If you've grown up in the church, I've been here, youth pastor for 18 years, and a lot of you in here, I've heard say there's consequences for every decision you make. Every decision you make, there's consequences. And God will choose to bless, or you'll go through struggles in life because of the choices you make. And I believe that firmly, that God honors obedience. God honors obedience, and know that. Number two, cohabitation brings no promise of provision. One of the main reasons I love a wedding is because the husband promises to provide for his wife. See, when a marriage certificate is turned in after the ceremony, the two become one. The woman decides to take on the name of the husband, and the husband takes and puts the name of the woman on all of the bank accounts, on the property, everything. Everything becomes one because they both promise to provide for each other. Do you catch that? That's what's important. Now think about this. Since there's no commitment of a man in cohabitation to protect the woman he's living with, she is very vulnerable. If he decides at any time he doesn't like what's happening, he can get up and leave, and there's no consequences for that. Plus, from a stupid male and stupid, just sinful state, why would a man marry someone he's cohabitating with? He's already getting every privilege of the marriage without any responsibilities. To me, that's craziness. Because we see it completely wrong. Because society has bought us into this lie that it's better. A famous philosopher of the 21st century, Beyonce, said this: "If you liked it, then you should have put a ring on it." Never thought Beyonce would be in a message, but it is. She's right. Number three, cohabitation doesn't provide a chance for public parental approval. It doesn't provide a mother or father a chance to bless the relationship. One day, on the actual Jewish wedding day, the bride and groom wore laurel crowns given by their parents. They were given crowns because during their wedding week, because they wanted to see by everyone that they were treated king and queen. It was their way of publicly supporting the wedding and telling everyone that they were proud of the marriage. Cohabitation doesn't do any of that. There's so many other more downfalls, but those are three of the big ones of today's society and the decline of marriage and weddings. There's three things I want you to gain from Song of Solomon these 3 weeks. And the first one is he mentioned it 3 times. And number 1, Song of Solomon emphasizes that true love waits. I put the 3 verses in there. See, true love waits to have sex until after marriage. True love waits for God's timing. The problem is if you don't celebrate a wedding as important, then subtly you're making a statement that marriage isn't important. Because they go hand in hand. And your marriage is extremely important. Currently, it says that 60% of all marriages that are preceded by cohabitation end up, more than half of those end up in divorce or leaving, better way to say it. And when kids are involved, it's even worse. So let me clearly say, marriage, not cohabitation, not cohabiting, is God's plan. Marriage is God's plan, which has your best interest at heart. I want you to know today that happily ever after is available. It is obtainable, but it will take work. See, when the honeymoon is over, the thrill of romance can fade if it's not nurtured. We've seen this all times. We think somehow we've been brought into the thing that marriage is sex all day, every day, with kisses goodbye and meals ready when you come home, nice and hot and warm, with rainbows and unicorns playing in your backyard. That's what you just think it is. But then reality happens. And it's not that. Actually, the unicorns and rainbows are fighting in the backyard. Song of Solomon makes a clear case that that's not the way life is. Because even though sex inside of marriage is designed to be amazing, it's the other things of life that can take the joy out of marriage. And marriage is not easy, but it does take work. But it's so rewarding if we keep the right perspective. It's sad how quickly romance can change to reality. First comes love, second comes marriage, then comes baby in a baby carriage. Or maybe it's rent, or maybe it's family, maybe it's dishes, maybe it's laundry, maybe it's taxes, maybe it's jobs, maybe it's hobbies, maybe it's friends, maybe it's sickness. When the honeymoon is over, you need to nurture your marriage. Some of you have been married for quite some time now. That's why Song of Solomon was written. Pursue, chase your spouse. It needs nurtured every day. The second main thing Song of Solomon emphasizes is that true love withstands problems. Divorce is so prevalent today because when marital issues start, it's easier to blame each other and quit than it is to stay there and work it out. We've made the marriage certificate to be a contract. Sadly, a lot of people get married today where they get the lawyer out and they sign the contract, and if something doesn't work out, this is what happens and this is what happens. The Bible never said that was supposed to be. It said it was a covenant. When I signed that marriage certificate, it said, "Till death do us part." Rich or for poor, sickness or health, I will do what it takes to provide for my spouse. And we've made that to be this legal mumbo jumbo, and it's not. It's a covenant. It's a covenant like God had with the people of Israel, that Jesus has with the church. It's the covenant that will always be faithful. Marital problems happen when love and respect is broken. We talked about it last week. Women want to be loved. Men want to be respected. Ephesians chapter 5 talks this through. And when you don't do to the other person what they need, then the issues happen. And it's a crazy cycle that happens. If you stop going out of your way to serve each other, you'll wake up one day and you'll question your marriage. But true love withstands problems and works through problems. Song of Solomon, you're in Song of Solomon, chapter 2, verse 15. Song of Solomon just went through and just talked about how much he praised his wife. And in verse 15, he says this, catch for us the foxes, the little foxes that ruin the vineyards, our vineyards that are in bloom. When Solomon writes this, he's talking about the problems that you have in marriage. See, in Middle East farming, foxes in the vineyards could not be ignored. Even though they were small, they were very destructive because they would rip out vines and they would eat all the ripe grapes that were in bloom, as it says here. And he would just terrorize the whole vineyard. And this analogy was Solomon's way of saying that there's going to be little problems that will slowly ruin or eat away at your marriage. If you don't catch the foxes or solve the problems in your relationship, they'll damage it. Be warned, because little annoyances turn into big problems later. I talk with my marriage couples before they get married, and I say to them, the little things you don't like about your spouse now won't change for the good when you get married. They actually get worse. You think, no, I'll fix them. No, you just got fixed. And it's the things that we think, but those little annoyances, the older you get, those little annoyances, when nurtured, turn into be a good thing in the marriage. Things you can laugh about, things you can have fun with, of just learning and growing with each other. What little things are destructive in relationships? First thing I thought of was improper thoughts. Why doesn't he take me out anymore? Did I marry the right guy? Why can't he be like so-and-so? Be careful what role we play in our minds, because we will real play them in our lives. See, men and women are created differently. We think differently, and we have different triggers for arousal. Men, for arousal, it's visual. We see a woman's body and we're like, she's hot. Yes. That's it. Women, they're verbal. That's why they get into soap operas and novels and the Hallmark Channel. Because that's their trigger. Guys were like, oh, this is awful. How many guys have ever had to sit through a chick flick? Right? Because that's how they perceive. We want to see something blow up. And usually what blows up is our minds, because we can't understand it. Be warned, because fantasy is only one step from reality. Guys, because it's visual, pornography is a huge deal. Or adultery, or any of those things. Ladies, it's your heart. Be careful. Improper thoughts, do not let them in. Guard your thought life. Philippians 4:8 says, whatever is true, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, think on such things. Second thing is lack of effective communication. Wow, that's one of the biggest problems in a marriage. Okay? When we play volleyball, a lot of you know I'm a volleyball coach, and you have two people standing next to each other, and the ball lands right between the two. We called that a married couple. I thought you had it. No, I thought you had it. And we sit there and we debate on who had it. When someone just had to take the opportunity and just take it. Lack of effective communication are the little things that can ruin a marriage, just like the fox. If you're not clear in your expectations, if you're not clear in your intentions, you frustrate the other partner. You can choose to whine about this problem, or you can work on a solution. We need to talk it through. That's why Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4, I have it on the screen, in your anger, do not sin. Do not let the sun go down while you're still angry, and do not give the devil a foothold. See, if you go to bed angry, all these things play off in your mind, and they give you the improper thoughts that we talked about there. But Paul says, don't let that happen. He says, don't let the devil have an opportunity to mess up your life. He says this, before you go to bed, talk it through. If you can't talk it through, okay, how many of you guys, okay, honesty here. You're getting ready to go to bed, and then your wife brings that big question. And you're like, oh, I'm so tired. Why did you do that? Because I don't agree with that. That happens all the time. Because they're processing through the day, and it's just like, no! The devil wants that opportunity. And I'm not saying that the devil is leading your wife. I'm saying that we need to understand and watch our communication. If we have to go to sleep with it, we pray over it. And we do what is right through it because it makes a huge difference there. Again, we've got to communicate and guard our thought life. The third thing that is just little foxes that ruin our marriages and our relationships, and it's busyness. Busyness. Song of Solomon 5:2 says, I slept, but my heart was awake. Listen, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my flawless one. He's knocking at the door, and the door is locked because he hasn't been home. He's been too busy. I say to everyone I meet, be at home 3 nights a week. And be at home. Do you understand that? Be at home 3 nights a week where you have the phone away or the computer away, where you're there and you can able to spend quality time. See, busyness kills everything. Invest in your spouse and your children. Gentlemen, schedule your family like it's the best and most important opportunity of your day, of your week. Number 4, selfishness. Song of Solomon 5:2, you remember that the door was locked? Well, check out what she says in verse 3. She goes, I've taken off my robe. Must I put it on again? I've washed my feet. Must I soil them again? He's asking her to unlock the door, and she's like, I just put my robe off. It's just... You ever been there? The fourth thing is selfishness. Here, the busyness of life gets to them, and they don't want to serve each other every minute of every waking day. And they're no longer meeting each other's needs. See, he's not meeting her emotional needs. He's not listening to her and enticing her as they were when they're courting. And she gives him what he deserves. She locks the door, gives him the cold shoulder, tries to teach him for not taking her for granted. Basically, she's denying her, denying sex as a way to hurt. This is not what a healthy marriage looks like. See, when you stop making quality time for each other, check out what happens. You stop meeting each other's needs. When your spouse disappoints you, it's actually sinful to respond in selfishness. Often disappointment leads to frustration, and frustration leads to bitterness, and bitterness leads to trouble. Do you remember Hebrews chapter 12, verse 15? It says, see to it that no one falls short of the grace of God, and no bitter root grows up to trouble and defile many. Even though our feelings of bitterness and anger and resentment seem justified, they're only hurtful and destructive. I want you to allow yourself to walk into forgiveness. See, instead of allowing the enemy to plant relational weeds in your life, Ephesians chapter 4, he says, forgive. Be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving one another. See, marriage is about serving your spouse before it's serving yourself. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, we mentioned that last couple weeks. A sexless marriage is not God's design, and it's not healthy. In fact, I want you to know that sex is supposed to be an indicator of a healthy marriage. There's 3 indicators of a healthy marriage. Number 1 is good communication. Number 2 is good in finance, that you're secure. And number 3 is a healthy sex life. Those 3 things. If one of those 3 areas is off, it puts a strain on all the other ones. I always tell my married couples to take those three things and talk about them openly, talk about them often, so that you know where you are in those scenarios. See, selfishness can only hurt your relationship. Those are the little things. And so the last thing I want to say is, number 3, the big thing we can learn from Song of Solomon is Song of Solomon emphasizes that true love willingly chases your spouse. You gain the 3 things. The true love waits, true love works through problems, and third is willingly chases. Chasing is one of the biggest things that we can learn from the book of Song of Solomon, is chasing. When you're courting, when you're trying to mac on a girl, guys, and you're like, whew, she's hot, here we go. You are spending every amount of effort to chase her. You even diss your own guys because she wants to go out. And you do everything you do to chase her. And then when you get to the wedding, you're like, I got her, and well, whatever. And that's not what it's supposed to be. Song of Solomon says, chase, chase, chase as much as you can. Pursue. Here in Song of Solomon chapter 3, Solomon's wife, rather than letting him go, chases after him. Check out verses 1 through 4 of chapter 3. It says, all night long on my bed I looked for the one my heart loves. I looked for him but did not find him. I will get up and go about the city through its street and squares. I will search for the one my heart loves. So I looked for him but I did not find him. The watchmen found me as they were made their rounds in the city. Have you seen the one my heart loves? Scarcely had I passed them when I found the one my heart loves. I held him and I would not let him go. What I love about the woman in here, Song of Solomon's wife here, is rather than assuming the worst, that he was off with another woman, that rather than sitting there and letting her mind stew in fear and bitterness, she got up and did something about it. She goes after him and looks for him, and because she cares about him and she cares about the marriage. What does this tell us? Face your marriage problems and don't ignore them. Rather than sitting home stewing, throw on your bathrobe and your pink fluffy slippers and go chase them. We think it's the guy that's got to do the chasing, but here, I want you to see it's the woman that's doing the chasing. It needs to be both of us. I heard an illustration that I thought was great. A couple had gone through some rocky times in their marriage. After one fight, the wife got so mad, she pulled her suitcase out of the bedroom closet and started packing it. Husband asked, what are you doing? The wife replied, I'm leaving. Without saying a word, he got his suitcase out and started filling with his clothes. The wife wondered what he was doing and said, what are you doing? And the husband said, well, if you're leaving, I'm going with you. I've heard it said, when you're headed for marital shipwreck, swallow your pride and save your bride. Don't be embarrassed to get help. Read books. Go get professional advice. Then get friendly advice. Your friends aren't necessarily the best place to go to advice for. I'll just say that. If you need help in your marriage, look at Song of Solomon, chase it. Our pride is what costs us most in life. Most marriages, when they hit rocky times, usually neither the husband nor the wife will humble themselves and do something about it. Chase each other, pursue each other, romance each other, stay with each other. See, marriage requires work, self-sacrifice, and pursuing each other, but it is awesome when it's nurtured. It's a thing to celebrate. 44 years, congratulations. It's a thing to celebrate. It is a thing to celebrate. My parents last year, 60 years. Awesome. Awesome, awesome opportunity to celebrate. And before you think about it, men, Solomon is not suggesting you stay late at work so your wife comes in her bathrobe to find you. I'm just saying that. As Solomon said. As we close here today, if you're single, what can you learn from Song of Solomon? Well, you can learn to look for ways to serve so that you can start rooting out the selfishness in your life. As of now, when you're single, everything you do is for you. It's all you're practiced. And from the day you're born, you're working on yourself. But think of ways that you can serve your family and friends and make wise dating choices. I love Psalms 119:9. How can a young man keep his way pure? By living according to your word. 1 Corinthians 6:18 through 20 basically says, honor God with your bodies. Lastly, from Song of Solomon there, if you're single, is don't awaken love until you say I do. Don't awaken love until you say I do. If you're cohabitating, the biggest thing is I say, please stop. It's not God's design. Get a ring and make it right. God will bless you. And notice, for all you millennials on there, I put both stop signs on there, the ones with the white and the one without it. So you have to, either one of them is, some of you guys know the joke that if it's got the white around it, you don't have to do it. Well, I put both up there. God says stop. And he says it because it's important to celebrate the wedding. It's important to celebrate the marriage. If you're married, you have to root out selfishness and replace it with servanthood. Godly romance takes time and it takes servanthood. But you need to invest in your spouse more than just a date night. Invest in communication. Invest in your future. Some of you have never taken a vacation together. We don't have the money. Well, that's a lie. All you have to do is save it. Put some away and go and take it and use it. See, we have what we prioritize for. And our weddings and our marriages have to be a top priority. If you know of someone who's going through marriage troubles or going through dating troubles or cohabitating or whatever, pray and ask God to give you wisdom and direction on how to address and how to talk through issues with them. Because God does supply answers to every need that you have. And you know what? Sadly, our society, we've put ourselves in the hole because we haven't done what is right. We haven't made marriage be that important. To the point where marriage is on a steep decline in today's society. Fight for your marriage and chase each other. We all need to keep selfishness out of relationships and do unto others as you would have them do to you. Matthew 7:12, the golden rule. Why is it the golden rule? Because it's the most important thing in life. Is doing to others as you would want for your own self. Today, Song of Solomon was written for us to understand that marriage and the wedding and the engagement, it's all worth it. It's all the reason to celebrate. Celebrate your marriages. Chase each other. Celebrate weddings. Encourage. Help them. I always joke that, you know how we give a wedding shower, right before they get married? Like 10 years in, we should throw another wedding shower. And just say, hey, congratulations, you made it 10 years. Well, I'm getting to the point where it's like, man, maybe it's 5. Maybe it's 1, whatever it might be. But to celebrate what God has designed for us. Song of Solomon is definitely for today. It's definitely for today because it's the same thing inside of us that we pursue our loves on earth is the same that we should be pursuing God in heaven. We should have the same love. We should be chasing the Father. That's a lot of people think Song of Solomon was written to be allegorical and think that this is the way we should be pursuing God. And there's truth to that. But there's also truth to be pursuing our earthly relationships. So as we stand and as we close, if you can please stand with me, we're going to be singing a couple songs. After the first song, if you want to get anointed with oil, our ministry team is going to come forward and they'll be able to pray over you. But you know what, today, if you are married, I want to pray over you. If you have your spouse with you, grab them by the hands. Remember what that felt like when you were engaged. If you're dating someone, you can take their hand too. And I want you to pray with me for your relationship, that God would be first in it. So let's pray. Lord, I come before you right now and I thank you, Lord, for the relationships that we have here today. Lord, I thank you for all the married couples in this place. Lord, I pray a blessing upon their marriage. Lord, I pray that this series, Lord, will speak volumes in their life. Lord, they can see the things that are the little small foxes that are taking away, Lord, and that they will use, Lord, everything that you've challenged them with. Lord, that they will not give up, but Lord, they'll work harder. Lord, and they'll work smarter and they'll work better, Lord, and they'll love and they'll serve, Lord, like you've intended us to do. Lord, I pray for these weddings. I pray, Lord, that are coming up, Lord, with the ones that are just dating. Lord, if it's in their future, Lord, I pray, Lord, that you just make it the greatest thing ever. Lord, with everyone who's in here that's single, Lord, I pray, Lord, a blessing upon them right now. Lord, that you'll guard their thought life. Lord, that you'll guard their hearts. Lord, that they will not buy into the lie of society, but Lord, they will wait. They will not awaken or arouse love, Lord, until the proper time. Lord, I pray, Lord, that they will be able to hear the words, I do or I will. Lord, and that it will mean something. Lord, it will be a great time to celebrate. Lord, for every one of us in this place, Lord, I pray that you work on all our relationships, even our friendships. Lord, I pray that we stop being selfish, Lord, and that we start serving and we start being the church, Lord, that you've called us to be. I pray right now, Lord, that you would just bless, Lord, these couples and these singles in this place. Lord, that your hand will be upon them and your wisdom will be with them and that your Holy Spirit will speak loud to them. Lord, I thank you for Song of Solomon in the Bible. Lord, I pray, Lord, that we can pursue you. Lord, we can pursue you with the same pursuit that we pursue our earthly relationships. Lord, because you are worthy. You are worthy of it, Lord. And as we close in worship here, Lord, I pray, Lord, that we will pursue you. In Jesus' name.